you.
Thank you.
Hey. How are you?
Okay, so
Hey, Mitch. Okay.
with
pretty on time.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the official press conference for World Athletics on the opening day of the athletics at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. Today marks the beginning of what promises to be an unforgettable 11 days of athletics inside the Stade de France and, as we saw this morning, out on the roads of Paris. To kick off the press conference, I am honoured to introduce three remarkable leaders in world athletics who are shaping the future of our sport. First, please let me welcome two-time Olympic champion, multiple world record breaker, and president of World Athletics, Lord Sebastian Coe. Next, I'm delighted to introduce Olympic bronze medalist and World Athletics first female senior vice president, Jimena Restrepo. And finally, we have World Athletics Chief Executive Officer and World Championship silver medalist, John Ridgen. We'll first hear some opening comments by Seb, and then I would just like to ask you to raise your hand and let us know your name and where you're from before asking your question. So Seb, if I can hand the baton over to you, please.
Jamie, thank you very much. And don't worry, there'll be no PowerPoint presentations this morning. Jamie quite rightly pointed out that actually athletics is now underway. I'm delighted to be able to congratulate the Ecuadorian, Brazil and Spanish teams for 1, 2 and 3 in the men's 20-kilometre walk and in the women's 20-kilometre walk, China, Spain and Australia. And actually, if I just may digress for a moment, that's a pretty good indication of how universal our sport is, that on the first morning of a major championships, we're actually congratulating Ecuador for a gold medal. I would say this, wouldn't I? Athletics is the heart and soul of the Olympic Games. It's appropriate that we're back in a city that has now staged an Olympic Games 3 times. I remember actually shortly after London got across the line in 2005, I said I would hoped that I would be around, well, around in a sporting capacity. I had ambitions to be around when Paris did actually eventually stage a Games. And I'm delighted that I'm here because these will be an exceptional Games. We're rightly proud of our history. And if you allow me a little self-indulgence, it is, of course, in 1924 that Paavo Nurmi won 5 gold medals, the biggest medal grab in the history of track and field at an Olympic Games. Look, the Olympic Games has the ability to bring people together, particularly in a complicated and convoluted landscape. The world is fractured and divided at the moment, but actually I think genuinely people come here to watch jaw-dropping sport and the God-given talents of some of the most exceptional athletes that we have in any generation. There are 211 member federations here in our sport. That's more members than the United Nations. 83 federations in Tokyo. 83 federations in Tokyo got a top 8 finish. 43 hit the podium, and 23 of those nations were gold medalists. We now have 100 countries, as of Tokyo, that have now won medals at an Olympic Games. And that 100 was courtesy of India with its outstanding javelin thrower Neeraj Chopra, who of course won the gold, and of course Fabrice Sanga from Burkina Faso, who gave them not only their first medal but their first gold medal, and that took us to the 100. We have some exceptional talent coming through. In Tokyo, 14 of the 23 medalists were under 23. The youngest athlete we have here is 16 years, 4 months and 6 days, and that's an athlete from Kiribati. We have 48 disciplines, 23 male, 23 female, and of course 2 mixed relays, both the 4x4 and the race walk marathon relays. 144 medals are up for grabs in 11 days. Let me place on record my thanks. Having chaired an organising committee, I know how hard this is. So I would like this opportunity to thank the French, the Paris local organising committee, particularly the shrewd stewardship of Tony Estanguet and Etienne Tebois. I'd like to thank the people of Paris particularly, who have welcomed us as a sport in such a huge way. And of course, the Mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, and her teams, and the municipal authorities that on board make the difference between a good and great games. It would be remiss of me not also to thank the volunteers who will be in evidence over the next 11 days, particularly around our stadium, given the crowds that we are expecting every day and the service levels that our sport has got used to. So I'm delighted you're here. Thank you for taking time out. I know you're juggling all sorts of time zones and deadlines, but we don't take lightly the fact that you are here consistently supporting the sport. Thank you. Back to you, Jamie.
Thanks, Seb. Okay, so now we will go to the floor. Who would like to ask the first question?
Oh, lucky me. John, it's Eddie Pels from AP. I know Seb is doing the $50,000 thing. I think you're the guy who has to write the checks, though. So congrats. What was your reaction? There was actually some not so positive response to that from the Olympic world when it was announced. Were you surprised at that?
You're talking the $50,000.
The $50,000, and I'm also wondering like where the money comes from.
I wasn't surprised at all. A key part of our strategy going forward has been for the last few years is make sure that we reward our athletes. They're the stars of the show. They, I think, deserve, as our income grows, to share an increasing part of that. And if you look at our existing World Championships beyond the Olympic Games, we're spending $24 million in prize money over the 4-year Olympic cycle in our existing World Championships. And Seb and Council and we just felt that actually our highest profile event should be part of that, and actually the athletes should be rewarded as being part of the Olympics in the same way they're rewarded as part of the World Championships, hence the fact that Seb announced the gold medal bonus for here in Paris with the ambition and the intention of extending that to all 3 medals in LA in 4 years at time. We just feel it's the right thing to do, and I think and Seb, you may want to say something about this in a moment, but I know there has been some concerns voiced that perhaps we were taking money away from development to put into prize money. That couldn't be further from the truth. Over the 4-year period, World Athletics already spends over $50 million in development. Our intention is to increase that money going forward. So we see that both can coexist perfectly happily in terms of making sure that athletics is a vibrant way to make a living for our leading athletes because they put on an incredible show. But at the same time, we're very focused on working with our 200-plus member federations around the world to make sure that athletics is developed around the world. And actually, going back to Seb's opening comments, I think you can see it's working. Over 100 nations have won medals here at the Olympics in athletics. So we're a sport that's very proud of our global impact. So So in summary, no, it didn't surprise me. This is absolutely part of our athlete-focused approach of wanting to reward the athletes more, not less, going forward.
Seb, did you want to add anything?
I'm not sure there is. And I think, John, you covered it perfectly. I mean, the one additional point I would make is that I'm really surprised that people don't see the correlation between athletes of high profile that are comfortable and whose welfare is being looked after and their ability to perform and raise the profile of the sport and add to the broadcast revenues and the sponsorships that come in. And as John said, it's not complicated to recognize that the athletes need to be reflected in that proceeds of growth. I find nothing particularly strange about it, and we're not the only ones funding athletes. Well over 60% of national Olympic committees have done that for as long as I can remember.
Great, thank you. Rob.
Thank you. Rob Moore from The Sun. Seb, your 1981 800-metre world record has been bettered by 5 people in history. 3 of them came this month. Do you acknowledge that there has been a sort of major advance in shoe spikes technology? Does that concern you? Or do you actually welcome these could be the fastest Olympic Games in history, aided by the developments of the shoe technology?
Well, if I'm being blunt, I'm actually quite surprised there are only 5 people that are actually, since 1981. We're talking 43 years. So, look, in a way, it would be a bit like asking Roger Bannister how he would have felt or how quickly he'd have gone had he worn the shoes I wore back in 1981. I'm sure Rudolf Harbig in 1946 when he ran, 1936 when he ran, 146, would have loved to have worn shoes from, whatever generation. So, no, I don't get sleepless nights over it. I think it's the evolution of technology. For the very first time, and it's not an exact science, and John do come in at any stage, but for the very first time we now have an evaluation team at World Athletics that's being able to work alongside the shoe companies, and then we work very well with them. We talk to the athletes, we talk to the coaches, and you'll be familiar with, the way we've created the regulations. They're not perfect, but I just tend to think that is the way technology works, and I don't think as an international federation or any organisation over civilization, I don't think you're best served by trying to strangle strangle innovation and technology. And the shoe companies are a very important part of our landscape, and I think there's a balance to be struck, and we will continue to monitor that. So if it means we get really fast times in the stadium, actually, I probably welcome that on balance.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mitch Phillips from Reuters. Hi, Seb. Having seen.
We can hear it.
Having seen the crowds at the Stade for the Sevens and then the amazing crowds on the streets yesterday for the triathlon, how excited are you to be going back to full stadiums after Tokyo, after Rio, not always so full, for, as you say, the heart and soul of the Games?
Look, it's great. It's fantastic, and I'm sure every sport feels like that. I've spoken to many of the international federation presidents, a lot of the spectators too, who actually would have been in, there's an international cohort of people that travel the world following Olympic Games. I just think there's a release of passion and excitement here. And look, we had a great track championships in Tokyo, but clearly having noisy, passionate, informed crowds in the stadium over the next 11 days will make a huge difference to the athletes. I'm actually amazed that the athletes competed as well as they did in Tokyo with some of the performances and some of the times, given the slightly sterile atmosphere that was inevitably there.
Hi, Seb. Luke Phillips from AFP.
Hi, sorry.
Can you give an update, please, on where you are with the potential inclusion of cross-country and Winter Olympics with the Olympic programme?
Yeah, look, this conversation actually goes back some months now, and the potential for the co-creation around a two-sport option with cyclocross. I discussed with David Lapatien some months ago. Obviously, now that we have 2 settled winter games, 2030 and 2034, France and the United States, we've had good discussions, a lot of details still to be sorted, but some good discussions about the thought of sharing the same course with cyclocross, which in itself would probably add a little bit of jeopardy into cross-country, which is what we've welcomed in the past, particularly around our recent cross-country championships. And for me, there's one really important element in this. I've always wanted to see cross-country back. I think it is obviously more at home in the winter. It is historically and traditionally a winter sport. And it really does give Africa an opportunity to have a really serious part, be a serious part of the Winter Games. So look, we'll see where we get to, but there's a lot of goodwill. I certainly want it. David's very keen. I've already had tentative discussions with the US OPC and the organizing committee in Salt Lake City. So let's see where we get to. But I think the Africa issue for me is a really important one. And also seeing cross-country, which has got some really good Olympic values back, well, not back, but into a winter games. It was last year in 1924. A slight historical digression here. I joined the Hallamshire Harriers a long time ago, but my first club president was a guy called Joe Williams who competed here. Yes, I am carbon dating myself. In 1924 as one of the 6x6 mile members of the British relay team. And cross-country was removed from the games because of heat conditions and not helped by the fact there was a factory along the side of the course at Stade Colombe that was so that those athletes that didn't collapse of heat exhaustion went down with asphyxia. So it wasn't an ideal situation. It's not been back since then, but I think its obvious home is the winter. So let's just see where we get to. But I think there's a good, to use a cricket analogy, there's more than an outside edge of a chance that we could probably get this across the line.
Hi, Seb. Jonathan Golt here from, is the mic working?
Yeah.
Jonathan Golt here from Let'sRun.com. I was wondering, what are your thoughts about Michael Johnson's Grand Slam track? And do you see it as a rival to the Diamond League and World Athletics Series meets?
I don't see fresh investment as being anything other than a collaborator, not a rival. And that's just not the way I've ever viewed the world. I think we should take some, we should be comforted by the fact that in the last few years, John and the teams, our commercial teams, our athletes, the ecosystem of athletics has suddenly become an attractive proposition for external investment, and that's a good thing. Any additional event, which we would of course welcome, has to work. It has to have quality thresholds. It has to work for the athletes. It has to work for the broadcasters. And this is a complicated landscape. It's not something that you can just throw together. We're working, and have been working for effective the last year and a half, 2 years, on the 2026 event. And I won't bore you with the minutiae of HQ roles and responsibilities, but I think John will nod when I say that a large part of his waking time and our innovation teams, our competition teams, and all the other groups that make up World Athletics is spent finessing and making sure that this is an outstanding competition. So, yes, if people are going to come into that landscape, I welcome it. It's a good sign that the sport is heading in the right trajectory.
Andrew Greif, freelance for multiple outlets. This is for Seb. Along with the Grand Slam track, there have been a number of different properties that have been introduced that have kind of represented that fresh investment into the sport that you guys have wanted. But a lot of them have said they were only track events, only hosting those. Obviously, field event athletes have not been in favor of that. As you go forward, are you at all concerned at all about sort of track's ability to coexist with field, with new investment, and what people maybe are attracted to?
I don't think it's my role to control the market or even try to skew it in one particular direction. That's really a matter for those that are putting the investment in. What I can tell you is our commitment in World Athletics to the development of a sport that is track and field, and its development at the same speed is undeniable. And again, our innovation teams are spending as much time trying to figure out how we can work alongside those disciplines in the field to make sure that they have as much excitement and attraction and traction as our track events. But look, I'm conscious that Serena Williams and her husband are putting together an event in September. I actually hope to be there. But look, let's just see where we get to. But of course, World Athletics commitment through our World Championships and even Budapest in 2026 is to make sure that we give equal status to track and field. But innovation is important. Innovation is as important in the field as it is in track. So there are no, there are no sacred cows here. If we think we can do something to improve the interest and excitement of a discipline, then we will do that.
Seb, good afternoon. Mike Walters, Daily Mirror.
Hello.
The 1,500 metres competition begins tomorrow, a distance with which you are indelibly linked, and as well as your medals. How excited are you to see one of the blue ribbon competitions look like becoming a tremendous event in itself with Kerr and Ingebrigtsen and others? It has the potential to be one of the special events of these Olympics, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And look, I'm trying hard to be sort of broad brush about it, but yes, of course. And it's nice to see the 1,500 metres back, in the spotlight. And we've got two. Well, it's a sumptuous thought that the two best 1,500 metre milers of their generation, and for some time, are potentially in a head-to-head, and there's added piquancy because this is probably not a friendship made in heaven, and that doesn't bother me either. We want that kind of thing in the sport, so it really could be a race for the ages. I'm, very, very excited about it. I'll try and find my way into the stadium. No, I think those days are over. I ran all right this morning, but it's a very charitable description of what I was doing.
Hi, Stephanie Genzer from CBC News. Seb, you've said that World Athletics is not a political body, and yet you've taken a very strong stand on Russia and Belarus. If you could talk about that. And second, you've been to Ukraine yourself. You've issued an invitation to President Zelensky to attend the games, and I realize you can't, for security reasons, say if he has RSVP'd, but could you tell us what message that would send if he came to these games?
Well, let me be clear. I didn't actually extend an invitation to President Zelensky to come to Paris because I think that has been extended already, and through the normal channels that you would invite a head of state. What I did say to him was that if he is in Paris, then we hoped that he would spend some time with us in the stadium. Ukraine have some very serious medal chances, and it would be great for them and for the athletes. I am acutely conscious, of course, having been to Ukraine recently, that he does have other duties, and they're probably marginally more pressing than what any of us are dealing with here. No, you're right. The World Athletics is not a political body. Thank goodness it's not an NGO like some organisations that are trying to become NGOs. We're not like that. And actually, we made a tough decision about Russia and Belarus, but that wasn't done on politics or passports. It was done absolutely on the integrity of the sport. And the Council, back in 2022, decided, and we had to make a decision quite quickly because we had to move very quickly because only a few days afterwards we had our World Racewalk Team Championships in Oman, and there were athletes that would normally have been there, and we had to make a judgment. And the judgment was very clear that and I've been to Ukraine, there is a track and field team coming here that would normally be 70 plus. It's now under 30. There are many of the male members of that team fighting on the front. The coaches have been denuded in that system. It is a very constrained world that those athletes are having to operate within, and also the domestic federation. And we looked at this as being a matter of integrity. Was it fair that those athletes that were going to be so disadvantaged should also have athletes from a country that, demonstrated such aggression? And it was really about the integrity of the sport, in exactly the same way that we made judgments about transgender, DSD. For me, the immutable principle here is, what do you need to do to deliver a sport that has integrity both on and away from the field of play? And that was the decision that we made. And no, we have no intention of making political pronouncements or deciding that, we are a second United Nations. We're not. We are the World Athletics, but from time to time we will make judgments that sit at the heart of what we believe to be, the integrity of a sport, and those are the decisions that we will continue to make. And this, by the way, this was a unanimous decision of a council. I'm sort of joined by my senior vice president here. This wasn't a long run for home. This was what the council uniformly believed in.
Maynard, do you want to just share, from a council's point of view, about making that vote?
Yes, of course. I turned it off, sorry. Yeah, as council, we were all supporting that decision that Seb just mentioned. It was a tough decision to make, because it meant that some athletes wouldn't be able to compete, but I think it was the right thing to do, and that's why we as council decided to vote against allowing Russia and Belarus to compete.
Thank you. Rob.
Hi, Seb.
Hi.
Have you had other sports athletes lobbying for you to get prize money for them as well? And
no, look, again, let me be clear. We didn't do this, predicated against what other federations were going to do, although, there's been a little bit of static around that. But look, I've had conversations with athletes from many, many other sports, both Olympic and actually professional, and they support the position that we've taken. But as I'm clear, we didn't do it. All the decisions we make tend to be predicated on what we think is in the right interests of our sport. That doesn't always seek alignment with what other sports federations are doing. But really, that is for them. I'm not elected to represent them, but I think we made the right decision.
you just referenced one of the hardest decisions that you've had to make over gender eligibility and testosterone levels. Boxing is now going through this. There's a fighter today who's just been part of a bout where the opponent withdrew after 45 seconds. She was declared ineligible at a previous event. How challenging is it to deal with these sensitive and complex issues of gender eligibility?
It is if you don't have a clear-cut policy. You know, if you have a clear-cut policy, then however tough that decision is to arrive at, you have the policy, and then you have the, you have the compass. If you don't, then that is a challenge. And boxing has a challenge, of course, because there isn't actually an international federation or a body that is currently, in a way, responsible for that. So that's for another sport to deal with. But you do have to have clarity. You need clarity around policy.
Thank you.
Or a practical question, Rachel Steinberg from PA in Great Britain. Probably for John. Obviously, 3 years ago, one of the most memorable moments was a shared gold medal. And in terms of the prize money, I'm wondering if you have a policy set in place for what happens if something like that happens again.
Do you know, I'd have to go back to my regulations for that. But if the gold medal is shared, then the prize money will be shared. We're certainly not doubling up the prize money. But Jamie will confirm that's the case. But
that is the case.
That is the case. Good. Thank you, Jamie. But that was a magnificent moment. And actually, one of the highlights I'm looking forward to again is the men's high jump. Tambari Barsham rematch, and I think it's going to be one of the highlights of the track and field program. So looking forward to that.
Thank you. And a question for Seb as well. You're obviously someone who's spoken quite passionately about addressing climate change within sport. What has your impression been of the last couple of days here? We've seen sports rescheduled. We've seen unprecedented amounts of rainfall. Has that just served to validate your opinion that there is an existential threat posed by climate change?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And look, this isn't something that's crept up on us in the last few years. Actually, it was John that pointed out to me the other day that if you looked at the, and he's a geographer by the way, if you look at the statistical chance of rain on the day of the opening ceremony, pretty much any time, you know, for a big chunk of time you want to go back, it was 3%. So I remember in 2012 we were, you know, thinking in exactly the same way about opening ceremonies. In fact, it did rain for about, I can tell you, it rained for 11 minutes on the eve of the opening ceremony, because it's the only time I saw Danny Boyle in tears, our creative director. And then mercifully, but the more serious point is that 70% of our athletes will tell you already through research and discussions we've had with them that climate change has not only impacted their competition program, but it's actually impacting their training program. And look, sport is going to have to, I think sport will have to take some of these issues into their own hands. I can't see us not having a root and branch review of the global calendar to deal with some of these issues. And if I'm going to be vaguely critical, don't panic. It's not a political statement, because governments of all political persuasions are not gripping this properly. And I think it's going to have to be down to individual sectors to try and do what they can to deliver those mitigating circumstances. And when it comes to athletics, that's sport, that's quite serious, because we're talking about the welfare of the athletes. And maybe we are going to have to move some of our endurance events out of times of the year where, you know, we don't always want to have to turn up as an international federation with a field hospital. We just need to make sure that, you know, if we are true to our word about athletes being the first thought and not the last consideration, then there are lots of things that we are going to have to address in years to come, and probably sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
Stephen Granger from ESPN Africa, based in Cape Town. Continuing the theme of endurance events, the men's marathon, traditionally one of the blue ribbon events at the Olympics, this year has been replaced as the last event by the women's marathon. So maybe say a word on that and that importance. And is the marathon here in Paris, both the men's and the women's, perhaps the best quality marathon event that's ever been staged in the planet? And continuing with marathons, Africa being the continent where leading the world in marathon ability, is it time for Africa to stage a senior athletics championship? Last year we staged the World Cross Country in Cape Town in 1996, but nothing this century. Is that time come? So perhaps a word on those two issues.
Yeah, we actually have staged 2 World Cross Country Championships in this century. Mombasa in 2007, 2008, and then Kampala, Uganda in 2017. But I take the broader thrust of your question, and that is it's important that Africa plays a leading role in our sport. We've already had the World Under-18s and the World Under-20 Championships in Nairobi, and they were very, very good championships. And our bidding teams at headquarters under John's leadership are actively engaged with African federations about the potential to stage more events. I'm delighted actually that Continental Tour, which was really a creation of the last few years, has really helped in that space, and we have a lot more Continental Tour events, not just in Africa, but around the world. I'm going to let Jimena deal with the nature of why we changed the women's marathon to the last day. But in Eugene, we also, our last track event was the women's 4x400. And Jimena will articulate this probably better than me. But we are a sport that has covered a lot of ground in the last few years. It's probably one of the things I'm most proud about under my presidency in terms of really driving gender engagement and balance. And it's really, I guess, our way of saying that, we are a 50-50 sport. We don't enter into the moral maze of whether somebody a man winning the 100 meters earns more or less. It's a very comfortable space for us to be in. And on the field of play, we're in good shape. And there's still more to be done across our governance structures. But Jimena.
Thank you, Seb. We created in World Athletics 7 years ago the Gender Leadership Task Force, and I'm part of it since that time. And we were created to improve the presence of women in World Athletics. And that's what we've been doing for all these years. We started with, as you can see now, our council is 50-50. Before we wanted it to be 4 years before it was supposed to be like this. And one of the challenges was also to present women more, to show them more. And that's why we decided to have here the marathon as our last event. It was a way to showcase women a little bit more, and we've been doing it, as Seb said, in the 4x4. So on the track and on the road and on the field, we are 50-50 now, and we're showcasing women a lot. As you know, women get paid the same amount of money. We are completely equal right now in World Athletics. And our challenge at this task force is always to improve women, to have more women in our sport, and we've been working hard on that. And right now, we're also working on having, hopefully someday soon, 50-50 women coaches, 50-50 women officials. That's a little bit harder. It's been challenging for us, but that's what we're working on it. We want women to be 50-50, hopefully in all the areas of World Athletics.
Can I just say something about the marathon as well? Because clearly, sir, you're a marathon. You're a marathon fan, and we talked about the high jump earlier, and that's going to be one of the highlight events. The marathon is as well. Look, obviously, if Eliud Kipchoge wins the third consecutive Olympic gold, I mean, it's history making. But beyond that, the marathon course here in Paris that starts in the centre of Paris, that goes out to Versailles and back again, simply the toughest course there's ever been at a major championships for the marathon. And we believe that makes it the most interesting of tactical races. I mean, I can't wait to see it. And I think it makes it actually, I mean, for the athletes, it makes it more unpredictable. So as a result, I think it's really difficult to actually sit here and look at the form guides and go, these are going to be the medalists. It's going to be a fascinating race. And I, as I said, can't wait to see it. It will be undoubtedly one of the standout events. But I think also the special nature of the marathon is really brought home here in Paris because they're also doing a mass participation race, which I think, looking at Jamie to nod here, I think the first time ever there's been a mass participation marathon in Olympic as it is. Great. And again, that I think shows what a special distance the marathon is. And I mean, everybody gets the marathon, what a challenge it is. And we're delighted that not only have we got these two amazing elite races over the toughest course, we've also got a chance of regular French people, regular Parisians can take part in a mass race over this magical distance. So I think the marathon is going to have a very central, special place here in Paris.
Thank you.
Tyler Dragon, USA Today. Seb, with the Olympics coming to LA in 2028, is there any plans for World Athletics to try to increase the popularity of track and field in the United States?
Yeah, look, we had a program we created some years in the lead up to Eugene, and it's been slow burn, I accept. I mean, if you remember, we had the World Under 20 Championships in 2014 in Eugene. We then went to Portland for the Indoor World Championships, and I think there was an understanding, certainly in the Federation, that we needed to use this as a sort of decade-long glide path, slightly longer, into LA. LA is very important to us. We then had the World Championships in Eugene in 2022. And it's tough. It's a tough market. Let me be open about that. You know, again, you know, Michael is creating some events over there. I wish him well. That's a hard market. You know, it's not been easy. But we have more continental tour events there, which is important, and they are, you know, they're well run, well attended. And it's important because, you know, for as long as I have been around and competing, there's been that view that the American team sort of leave the States in May or June and the rest of the summer is spent on the European circuit. I would love to create more opportunities for European athletes to feel that there is there are reciprocal opportunities for them to race in the States. And you know, it is improving, but it's hard. That you know your sports market as well as anybody else. There are some big, powerful, intractable sports that you do have to start nudging.
Sebastian,
did you need another one? Yeah. No, look, Eugene have been fantastic and historic hosts, and you know it doesn't get called Tracktown USA for nothing. But West Coast is tough. You know, the breadbasket of our sport historically and still commercially is Europe, and so we absolutely live to the mantra that we're a global sport and we want to do everything we possibly can to take our sport, but an 8-9 hour time shift from some of your central athletics markets is complicated. Maybe it's more of a focus for development on the East Coast, where you have less of a challenge.
Sebastian Kraus from German ARD Radio and Television. Sebastian Coe, as president, you achieved a reform of World Athletics. You brought the federation to good days with a strict anti-doping program. Do you see your mission accomplished, and do you want to become now the next IOC president?
I thought we'd done quite well to get this far into the press conference.
44 minutes.
44 minutes, thank you, Jamie. No, look, there's a lot more I want to achieve at World Athletics, and this is my last term, and it will be my last term. And it's important that we drive the innovation agenda. The reforms are important, but they also need time, and that's something, you know, culturally embedding those reforms. So it's difficult for me to look beyond that because I don't think anybody is very clear about whether there would even be a vacancy.
Once again, about the anti-doping system, we have since several weeks a big discussion about alleged contamination cases from Chinese swimmers and how WADA handled the cases. What are your thoughts about that, and how big is your trust in the World Anti-Doping Agency?
Look, we work very closely with the World Anti-Doping Agency. We have our own athletic integrity unit that you are very familiar with. They are world class. I think they're gold standard, and we will continue to make sure they remain in that position. I know they work very closely with the World Anti-Doping Agency, and as long as the Athletic Integrity Unit are advising me that the relationships that they have on the ground, either with the World Anti-Doping Agency or the ITA, are solid and functioning, I will take that as my steer.
Thank you. David from FA at the back. David.
Good afternoon. David Ramiro, Agencia EFE. If it's possible, a question in Spanish for Jimena Restrepo. Hoy ha ganado el ecuatoriano Daniel Pintado en marcha, Marilady Paulino es una estrella en 400, tenemos a Yuli Marca, aunque está lesionada, está aquí en París. Son referentes del atletismo latinoamericano. Entonces yo le quería preguntar cómo cree que estos Juegos, quizás los más globales de la historia, pueden favorecer al atletismo y sobre todo impactar un poco aún más en la audiencia latinoamericana de cara a seguir impulsando este deporte.
Muchas gracias. Yo considero que el tener estos líderes, estos grandes referentes, es muy importante para nosotros. Y los Juegos Olímpicos siempre son un momento especial para crear nuevos líderes, nuevos ídolos en el deporte. Entonces, para nosotros como latinos es muy importante tener atletas que sobresalgan, atletas que estén en finales, ojalá ganando medallas, para realmente poder seguir impulsando el deporte en nuestra área, digamos, en nuestro continente o como latinos, porque es difícil para nosotros hacerlo y cada una de esas personas que lo logras con mucho esfuerzo, mucho trabajo y por eso mismo tenemos que apoyarlos muchísimo y convertirlos en nuestros héroes para poder seguir teniendo más jóvenes que se dediquen al atletismo.
Adam Kilgore with the Washington Post. Seb, what's your understanding of how fast the actual track surface is going to be at Stade de France? And how almost piggybacking on the shoe question earlier, how much do you think track surfaces play into time, performances, etc.?
The track surface will be fast. I mean, Mondo, who are our partners and the track manufacturers here, always want to create a track at a games that's faster than the one before. So I see no reason why that shouldn't be the case. And look, in a way, I'm probably not going to say anything particularly revelatory or revolutionary from, or major departure from my belief about shoes. It's part of the landscape, and I think it's good that people are investing in our sport, and it's good that performances are improving.
Seb, Tim Hutchings, Eurosport. Bearing in mind that I think a couple of years ago, the figure came out, there's over 1 billion runners on the planet. The marathons next weekend are going to be the most watched events here in Paris, I suspect. And the Olympic marathons are sacrosanct, that is a given. World Championship marathons, frankly, in comparison, are relatively forgettable, especially when you look at the World Marathon Majors and the other big marathons in the spring and the autumn. And I'm wondering if there's ever been consideration given to making the World Championships road race in the summer months, it's Tokyo next year, a half marathon. Has there been consideration? Because then the 5K guys would do it, the 10K guys, the marathon runners, and it'll be preparation for those autumn marathons. Just a thought.
Look, I guess their World Championship marathons are forgettable unless you win one. So we've got to be a bit respectful. But look, the World Championship marathon has a challenge, and that is that only weeks later you have Chicago. A few weeks after that, you're into the majors, and a lot of athletes are going to make a judgment. Their big paydays as opposed to competing. So I recognise that landscape. And we have, we're currently looking at that. I'll let John, if he wants to talk a little bit about this. But actually, a large part of our thinking has been, what do we do, about that slight disconnect? And when it comes back to the climate change discussion, if I may, that is also a consideration because, I sort of slightly, I did say it, that we don't want to be travelling in the summer months with a field hospital. And if you do have athletes' welfare, sitting at the centre. Look, it's a really simple concept for me. If you get it right for the athletes in any sporting organisation, you're going to get 80% of it right. You're going to get 80% of your project management right. You can't stage events that aren't working. You can't have villages that are substandard. You can't have a transport system that collapses within a few days. You can't have no operational integration between warm-up tracks and, those are all the things that you have to consider. And one of those considerations, of course, is welfare. So maybe it is a possibility that we could over the long haul, maybe not such a long haul, move the marathon into a more benign period of the year in terms of weather. It could be combined with a major, and it could mean that we commute the marathon at a World Championships to a half marathon. I think all those issues, I know because I've been party to those discussions, are on the table.
No, absolutely. Look, we talked about prize money earlier and being a key strategic imperative for World Athletics. Well, innovation changes as well. And all of these discussions are going on at the moment. It's clearly not for announcement right now. But yeah, we would accept, Tim, that sometimes at a World Championships it's not quite the quality of the marathon you'll have here at the Olympics, but I can assure you that the Tokyo World Championships next year are very excited about staging 2 marathon events, in the Japanese market, which love marathon running. But we also have to accept that the climate issues Seb talked about, the need for making these events as engaging as they possibly can be for the athletes is important. So, for example, the sort of things we're discussing is, yes, you could stage a marathon outside of the World Championships and instead stage a half marathon or even a 10K. But also you could still stage the marathon within the host city, just at a different time of the year. So there's lots of different ways of tackling this challenge, which are all being considered right now. And look, we're in a hurry to move things on. We're not sitting there just debating around, the council table for many years what we might do. We're making decisions. Hence the fact already this year we've launched the World Athletics Ultimate Championships for 2026, making sure we have a global championships every year. We've reconfigured the summer season, so it always finishes on a global championship. We've partnered with Netflix to create a new series Sprint this year. So we are hopefully putting our money where our mouth is in terms of making change, and certainly the marathon is one of the issues we're discussing to make sure it can be just as powerful as possible, because it is, going back to your question, such a magical distance. We want to make sure we fully embrace it.
Good afternoon, Andrea Bongiovanni for La Gazzetta dello Sport. Hi, Seb.
Hey.
Talking about walking, we had the 2 individual events this morning, and we're going to have the new mixed relay in a few days. So I was asking you, what do you think about the future of walking and at the Games in particular? Thanks.
Look, it's one of those, actually, it's part of the athletics disciplines that we are always seeking to improve, to build on popularity. It has a safe home in the World Championships. I'm probably not best cited to answer that question in terms of the Olympic Games. That's probably best directed at people on the Programme Commission. But we needed to look at some of those distances. We took, I think, the right decision that we needed to do something that was slightly different. Let's see, off the back of these games here in Paris, what the relay looks like, and whether or not that's something that we extend into other games or even enshrine in our own World Championships. So, look, yeah, it's an important part of our landscape. And if you look at the universality of our sport, then, having Ecuador, Brazil, that's a good starting point, really.
You forgot to mention Norway. Jan Saltvedt from NRK Norway. Just to follow up on the climate issue. I'm not going to ask you about the IOC presidency again, but regarding the Olympics. First, the next opportunity for Europe to have games would be 2036, probably 2040. Do you think, regarding field hospitals and everything, that there could be Olympics in what we regard as summer again in Europe with the climate change?
Yeah, you can stage an Olympics in a European summer. I just think for endurance events, particularly outdoors, you just need to think differently. And I'm open about that. I don't see any way around that. And it's not just athletics. There's cycling, there's open water swimming. You know, a lot of sports are obviously played outdoors. It's less of a problem if you're in an air-conditioned arena. But yeah, for sure, we will have to think about that. Can an Olympic Games be staged in a European country? Yes, and it should be. But, you know, you have different and competing challenges wherever you want to take a Games. And if you are consistent to the mantra that always gets a warm round of applause in any sports conference I've been to for the last 40 or 50 years, which is, yeah, we want to do everything we can and we need to, you know, globalize the sport and we need to take it to places where we can encourage more young people into the sport and everybody, you know, claps. But then, of course, when we try it, you end up in a sea of arguments about all sorts of things, including, you know, entries on TripAdvisor that got there and it was a bit warm. Yeah, you know, no shit. So the issue is really about how do you address some of these issues, but not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Thanks.
Ewan Crumley, Athletics Weekly. This is one for Seb and John as well, just to follow up on your mention of Netflix, just to see what the feedback has been from the sprint series, if it's opening up any new doors, both commercially and also towards perhaps even things like the middle distances with such great stories to tell there as well.
Yeah, look, the feedback's been fantastic. You know, wherever I've gone, from people that are interested in the sport or people who I think have now been introduced to a sport they had little or no understanding of, it's been terrific. I think I'm right in saying, Jamie, it's currently sitting number 6.
Number 6 in all.
Number 6 on all the viewing, across all the viewing on Netflix properties, which is a good place to be, and it's leading. You know, it's the number 1 currently viewed Netflix offering in sport, and there will be other seasons. And look, you know, our challenge will, of course, to make sure that we build on the excitement that we've created. But there's no doubt I've spoken to people who probably have never watched athletics before who suddenly realise actually it's quite an interesting sport. And the one thing to sort of pick up on the theme today is they've been quite surprised by the universality of it and just the bandwidth. You know, choosing my words carefully here, but, you know, some of the sports that have been featured are quite monocultural. But now you've got, you know, the production teams were quite surprised. They were packing up equipment and heading to Jamaica and Cote d'Ivoire and, you know, Kenya and Japan. I don't think even they had fully appreciated just how global. There are only 2 really truly global sports, football we accept, and I think track and field.
And just to add to those statistics and talking about global sport, it's the series not only global in terms of the athletes it features, also the audience. It's the top 10 rating Netflix program in over 50 countries. So it's been universally embraced. And what we're told as well is, I think the expression is dwell time, but the amount of sprint that people have actually consumed has been much more than the average Netflix series. So people just haven't watched it for 5 minutes and gone, yeah, fine. They've actually engaged with the whole 6 series, which I think is important. And a second series is being filmed as we speak. That'll conclude with these Paris Olympics, and we don't have the confirmed broadcast time for that, but hopefully that'll be later this year or early next year. So the momentum will be continued. But beyond that, who knows? And yeah, like you, sprint is wonderful. It's a really engaging. Clearly, you know, everyone gets being the fastest man or woman in the world is pretty sexy. But we've got a wonderful array of disciplines, and wouldn't it be great to actually feature perhaps some other disciplines going forward? And those discussions are going on, and not just with Netflix. You know, we've got other broadcast partners that have seen the power of this and actually are interested in this genre as well, which works for us because clearly, you know, we hope we can engage with a different, perhaps younger, more, you know, occasional audience that can perhaps capture, because you know, I think, you know, for me, the sense of how incredibly quick these athletes are really comes through on the sprint series, perhaps in a way that you don't necessarily see when when you watch them sprinting against each other. So no, we're really pleased with it, aren't we?
Well, it sits above Bridgerton, which I'm told is a good thing. So unfortunately, we are out of time as we have the next press conference coming in. So we will have to wrap it up there. Thank you, everyone. And let's look forward to a fantastic 11 days of athletics. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well done, Jamie. Amanda, thank you. Thank you, Seb. Hey.